Live from the Export Beer Garden Studios, hello one and all, and New Year salutations to all those cricket tragics out there tuning into the BYC. And what a summer of cricket it's been, a veritable buffet. And if you're anything like me, you've been stuffing your face and washing it all down with a few cold beersies. So there's much to get through. It's hard to know where to begin, but begin we shall. And I was going to say we were a man down today, but alas alack, Paul Ford, he's got a job apparently.
Yeah.
And a life, which to me is a very lame excuse, fellas, but we've got a more than capable replacement in the one and only Scotty J Stevenson. Fellas, how are you going? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Jay. Dylan.
Well, thank you, Scotty J. Yeah, I'm feeling very good, actually. I'm fizzed to be back, actually.
Are you fizzing,
I am
Dylan?
fizzing,
Are you?
yeah.
Good break, was it?
Not long enough, but it was
it's
a good
never
break.
long enough, though, is it?
Yeah, and actually, on which point I should say, Nathaniel wrote in,
Yes.
what the hell sort of cricket podcast takes their break in the middle of summer?
Well, this one.
This one.
Well, I think it's a fair point, to be honest with you, but, we've got to have a break sometime. I don't think people realise out there, fellas, 3 hours of radio a day, back-breaking stuff. And I tell you what, I was exhausted at the end of last year. I mean, there's all these people, I'm up at 6 doing labouring and all that palaver and carry on. Hoyte J at the coalface, 5 days a week doing radio for 3 hours.
Yeah. It's a tough gig you've got, Joes. But also, I would have a question for Nathaniel, and I hate answering a question with a question. But what's Nathaniel done over summer?
Yeah.
Well, did he just decide, well, if I'm not going to listen to the BYC, I'll do my own podcast? I don't think Nathaniel's put anything else into the world.
I bet you
I
he's
think
watched
it's a
a
fair
shit
point,
ton
Scotty.
of cricket, though.
Oh, yeah, he sounds like he had.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how was your break? Did you have a break, Scotty?
No break, Jace, as yet. What do we start? Super Smash on the 23rd.
Yes.
And it's been all guns blazing over summer with Super Smash.
Been enjoying that, by the way.
It's been great, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about it on the podcast today. I love Super Smash. I think it's one of those competitions that in a true New Zealand way is probably better than most people imagine, and they won't realise it until someone from overseas tells them how good it is.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Having said that, mate, I've been watching a lot of it, and we will get into it a little bit later on in the podcast. Looks like the crowds are turning up.
Yeah, been great crowds all summer long. And again, it's, special venues, right? Pukekura Park.
Yes, so good.
Stills Loves, and even at Fitzherbert and Palmerston North. Now,
Ooh, not so love.
Well, personally, there's not much in Palmerston North for me. It's not my kind of place.
Well, it's like a city that's been dropped in the middle of a paddock.
Yeah, look, but it's got the Easy Buy warehouse, and it's got the Toyota distribution centre, and the lovely Manawatu River. And unlike the Avon, not a lot of dead bodies float down there. So
Yeah, great.
that's also nice. But, tripping around and seeing the crowds on the banks, and it's all grass banks and families, and it's just a good vibe. Love it. It's wholesome content, Jason.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff, mate. And as I say, I enjoyed it over the summer break. But let's kick off with the Pakistan tour, fellas. Historically, Dylan, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we travel, to your Pakistans, your Indias, and we've struggled. But it seems to me, and I don't know whether or not this is because we're playing so much more cricket these days, but it's not quite the challenge that it used to be for international sides, i.e. New Zealand.
Pakistan isn't, because they just prepare these highways for pitches, which is really difficult to winkle batters out. Doesn't matter really if they're not taking the kind of turn I guess they used to, which is what makes it different from going to a Sri Lanka or India where it can turn square on the first morning. So, our batters dug in, really, and it was 0-0, but I'd have to say on the balance of things, it could quite easily have been New Zealand 2-0.
Yes. And we talked a little bit last year about New Zealand putting themselves in situations where they've got the foot on the throat, but they're not quite putting that final nail in, are they?
Yeah, it's a really difficult wicket to put that final nail in, though. I would give them a little bit of leeway in this particular occasion. I think Tim Southee kept him pretty well. Perhaps not as aggressively as I thought he might, but that was more in the instructions, I think, given to the batters. There were a couple of partnerships there where I thought they could have moved the chains a little bit quicker and faster than they did to maybe give us a little bit more time. But again, if you talk to tourists to Pakistan in the 80s and 90s about how they would have felt coming away, maybe not dominating, but having the upper hand in 2 tests and walking out with 0, and they were said,
For sure. Well, let's look at the first test. Pakistan 438 and 311 for 8 declared. New Zealand 612 for 9 declared and 61 for 1. You bring up a really good point, and that's something I want to bear down on, Scotty J. I'm actually very happy with Southee being skipper. I think he's an innovative fella. He's obviously highly experienced, with the dual bonus of freeing up steady the ship, Kane Williamson. And it seemed to me that he improved slightly, and for me, Southee has the goods as skipper.
Well, you also got to look at Latham's run production throughout that series as well. 113 in the first test, 71, 62 in the second test. Look, Southee's an experienced cricketer. He's our highest ever wicket taker. He knows the game well. Can't review for shit, but he knows the game well. And the players trust him as well, and I think that's really crucial. I think having someone like Tim Southee in charge. And to further the point, there is a comparison here, isn't there, between the way New Zealand played during those tests, and I agree with Dylan and you, Jay. So I think New Zealand probably found themselves in positions throughout the series where they thought, mate, we could put the foot down here and we could actually win this game. And I guess the comparison point is what England were able to achieve versus how New Zealand played the game and what they were able to achieve. And there is a stark difference, I think, in the way the teams approach those test matches, and that leads to a fascinating contest next month when England arrive on New Zealand shores. Different conditions, but they'll come in with the same intent, I think. And so I think, given the evidence of what we saw in those test matches, Dills, and the question I'd put to you is this New Zealand test side still capable of finding that extra gear? Or are they trying to find themselves again after what had been a hugely successful first cycle of the WTC?
Yeah, I don't think they can do baseball. I don't think they're set up to play baseball. They can beat baseball, though, I think, in our own conditions, which is two totally different things. The difference was stark, and the reason it was stark was because England just scored their runs so much quicker. Yep. They gave themselves time to get into that grind and get those Pakistan wickets that weren't falling regularly to be able to ride out a partnership between Sarfraz, who just batted like a genius all series, and Baba, and still have that time to get into the tail, whereas New Zealand just fell short on that a little bit. So, yeah, look, we're not going to beat England if we go out there with a Finalen-type attitude and try and match them. But I still think there's certain things we can do, particularly at the Bay Oval, which will...
and a day-nighter too.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I think one of the things we flagellated ourselves quite a lot last year because we felt like this team was on the downward slide. And we were talking a lot about where's the youth coming through and changes potentially needing to be made. I also think there's an argument in terms of the New Zealand selectors holding firm with the group that they've got, because I think the stability has actually served us very well. But Scotty J, you mentioned Latham and his production for sure. Conway again showing his real class. Williamson, of course, with the double 100. I'll tell you another thing that I was greatly impressed with. Ish Sodhi. Yeah. I felt that he went up a level and was bowling with real confidence and belief in himself. And we've struggled on the spin department for a little while, apart from Patel's phenomenal performance over in India. But he took a real step up for me, Dylan.
Yeah, he did. He seems to be a lot more energy through the crease.
Yes.
He's turning his leggy, which is really good to see, because my big criticism of Ish and Red Bull cricket throughout the years is just an inability to take wickets with his stock ball. And in Test cricket, when you can sit back and wait for the variations, you don't have to attack. It made him pretty ineffective, but he was turning his leggy. I thought maybe on that last day he bowled well to left-handers with the rough out of the foot mark, but I still thought he was a little bit loose and a little bit let the pressure off a little bit too easy bowling to right-handers. But yeah, massive improvement.
There's a problem for Sodhi though, because the limited chances he gets at Test match cricket, and then of course he comes back to bowl T20 white ball cricket, where you've got to be more of a variation specialist. So you might bowl 6 balls in the over and 5 of them are different, only 2 of them are your stock delivery. Then you go into a test match scenario and you're expected to just do it time and time and time and time again. But the other thing about Sodhi getting that recall to test status and getting that opportunity in Pakistan is he's old enough now, mature enough and confident enough in his own ability to be able to go out there and actually perform. And not just with the ball. I thought some of his performances with the bat were extraordinary as well. Yeah. And being able to go out there and actually feel a part of that team and wanting to make a contribution and knowing how to make a contribution, I think that's, it feels... Sodhi's never gone away, but it felt to me almost like a second coming for Sodhi.
Yeah. His fielding's still pretty shithouse. But, definitely some advances for him from my end, just on that front and on the spin bowling department. Beastie. I know that you were saying, Dylan, in the past that he's still not quite there at test level. As a spin bowler, his batting sort of dropped away a bit, but that sort of came right as well. What were your thoughts on his progression throughout the series?
I think he was okay in the test. I think he bowled enough overs to winkle out a few batters, and again he looked okay bowling into foot marks, which you won't get in New Zealand to the same extent. I was disappointed with his batting, and I thought it required... That
second test, though, he did come
massive amount of luck.
Yeah.
He couldn't pick the leggy Abra. He was, he was all at sea there. So he required a bit of luck, but he was very good in the one-dayers.
So, fellas, out of 10, what are we giving the test side in that series against Pakistan, Scotty?
I'd give a firm 7, and that's just based on the fact that I thought all the elements were there. I just think the execution at times during that test series wasn't, and I don't think that's, so I still think the nucleus of that test side is a very good test side, and I think coming away with a draw in the series in Pakistan, both matches drawn, I think that's something you can actually look at and say, that's not a bad result, really, in a challenging year.
Dylan?
Yeah,
he's much harder, Scotty.
Yeah, he's a hard marker. Yeah, he's a hard marker.
Watch him stick the knife in.
No, I'm going 6. I would have definitely given an 8 for a win, but I just think they had chances to win both tests and they couldn't quite do it. 6 it's a very credible pass mark. Top 3, better like genius, and once again, Tom Latham's weird career where he bats exceptionally against Asian teams and struggles against others. Continues. Top 3 better like geniuses. Tim Southee, I thought, bowled beautifully in...
He's at the top of his game, isn't he?
In conditions that just offered him nothing. 0. The other seamers struggled, and unfortunately, Ajaz struggled.
Yeah.
And so, 6 for me.
7 from Hoyte J.
It's a nice round number. Dylan is the Russian judge.
Yeah, totally.
Of the BYC
totally. And I refuse to give 0.5s as well.
Yeah.
You've made that very clear on the bounce.
In fact, I'm going to go 7.5. Let's go to the one-day series. New Zealand winning that 2-1. Also all in Karachi. The first one, New Zealand 255 for 9. Pakistan 258 for 4 in the 48th. The second 261, New Zealand. Pakistan 182 all out. And the third one, Pakistan 280 for 9, New Zealand getting there 281 for 8, thanks to some heroics from Phillips. Let's start with you, Scotty J. Your overall feeling of the New Zealand performance in the one-day series.
Well, you thought, looking at that first one-dayer, which was convincingly won by Pakistan, what was a 6-wicket margin, you thought this was going to be a tough old series. And so I think the way they were able to pull it back, especially in the second, where they were absolutely dominant. They absolutely crushed Pakistan in that second match with, again, Conway Williamson starring with the bat. I think that to me just shows the best format for New Zealand cricket at the moment is one-day cricket, without a doubt. I think they're a team that actually understands so well the individual roles in a one-day game. And again, to go down 1-0 and then to come back to win 2-1, first time in 46 years, best part of half a century. I know there's been a big gap between drinks in terms of touring Pakistan, but even so, this is a team, and this is why I think the Test match conversation is interesting as well. This is a team that is the reigning World Test champions, still ranked number 1 in one-day cricket, I believe, after that Pakistan series. There or thereabouts in T20 cricket, which can be a crapshoot at international level. This is still a very good cricket team, and we are still living in very rarefied air as New Zealand cricket followers and fans, because this team, on its day, I think can beat anyone in world cricket.
Yeah, I agree. Waiting! And I have to say, Dylan, that second one day, 261, I thought we were a bit short, but did well to bowl the Pakistanis out for 180 odd.
I've got a confession here. I was at the beach. I didn't see a single ball of the series, but I looked at the scorecards, and I would like your guys' input in this. It felt like the perfect blueprint for a one-day international. Their anchor guys, your Lathams, or more so Conway, Williamson, scored big runs.
Mm-hmm.
They got contributions, particularly Glenn Phillips, obviously in the third one, the plus runner ball contribution that you need from guys like Finn Allen, probably let himself down a little bit, but Phillips, Mitchell chipping in, those sort of guys chipping in, and bowled beautifully, obviously, if you're going by the figures.
Yeah, well, Conway for me, and I think he was man of the series. I believe, just showing his consistency. And I felt too, there's been maybe that Steady the Ship has been listening to some of the criticism that he's been receiving for the first time in his career about being a bit pedestrian. I felt he had more urgency. And I'll be honest, with regards to Phillips, I never rated him. But
what about now?
He's most certainly got X factor.
Well, one swallow does not a summer make, but the issue here, and this goes back to the point, role-playing players in teams in one-day cricket, and if they all execute their roles perfectly, Jace, you've been a part of ensemble casts before.
Yes.
You understand how it works. It's not always about the star. You have to have the support acts around you. You have to have the supporting actors, and so Phillips coming out and doing what he did in that third one-day international was the perfect time for Phillips to do what Phillips does. That's his job. Go out and do that. And if Phillips can do that each and every game, or if Bracewell can chip in with a 43, or if Conway and Williamson can get us underway and have a big partnership somewhere in that match, that is the blueprint for success in one-day cricket. People performing the roles they've been assigned.
You can't always be De Niro. Every now and then you need a Joe Pesci.
You need a Pesci.
Yeah. What, you're De Niro, did you say?
I feel sometimes a little bit De Niro.
Not the way you run between the wickets, Dylan. Did you see my run out, Scotty?
I don't like it when Mum and Dad fight.
Sorry,
I need to leave the room.
And also Southey, of course, bowling well. And it just feels to me with Southey that that he's at the top of his game, that he's a very talented cricketer. He knows what he's about. And as you were saying, Dylan, on those pitches, not offering him a great deal, but he finds a way to get wickets, doesn't he, Scotty?
Yeah, look, because he's a pro. He understands every weapon he's got very, very well. And the one thing you've got to say,
AKA sort of Jimmy Anderson.
Well, yeah, and the one thing you've got to say about Tim Southey, he hasn't stopped trying to improve. He hasn't stopped trying to learn new deliveries. He hasn't stopped trying to perfect what he's trying to do. And we've seen that over the last couple of years where Tim Southey has unleashed a delivery that perhaps he didn't have 5 years ago. So when you're a player of his age and maturity and experience, for him to still be out there in the nets every day trying to perfect something different, trying to surprise the batter, and he's tough to play anyway because his stock deliveries are accurate and they're tough to get away. He swings the ball, he knows how to move it off a seam, he knows a slow delivery very well, but he's trying new things all the time, and I love that about Tim Southey.
Two things to quickly make note of. I think in one of those tests in Pakistan, it was the first time New Zealand have played in all over 30 11. I think
right? I didn't know that.
I believe that's right. And with Southey also, one-day cricket, he was on the outer.
Yeah.
And he now feels indispensable again, which is quite something to do when you're moving into your
mid-30s.
The autumn of your career.
Yeah. But James Anderson, is he just the ultimate outlier in that department? He's got to be, doesn't he?
Well, he is.
How old is he now? Like 41?
Yeah.
Yeah, 41. How old's Tim?
36, maybe.
No, okay. So another 5 years?
Yeah.
Because he looks after himself. Doesn't get on the piss like you, Dylan.
Shit, 41.
Hey.
I'm sure.
So
have we got that wrong? Sorry, Jimmy, if we've got your age wrong.
So I'm, overall, fellas, when we look back on this Pakistan tour, encapsulating the test matches, the one-day series. Big tick from Hoyte J, Scotty.
Yeah, it is. And again, for all reasons listed above, go back 40 years, and if you'd said a New Zealand team was going to emerge from Pakistan with a 2-1 series win in the one-days and a drawn test series, you would take that every single day of the week. I think our expectations have naturally climbed with the performances of the side, but that's a good result for me from a tour to Pakistan. They're first in a long time.
Yeah.
Dylan?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Good stuff, mate. Hey, keeping on the one-day theme, of course, New Zealand, their tour in India starting tonight in Hyderabad. Can we win without Steady the Ship and the Sexy Camel, fellas?
Oh, it's a tough one. I have my doubts. Looking at what India did to Sri Lanka recently when they just steamrolled them in home conditions.
What's the margin of victory? 317 runs in that last one day? It was ludicrous.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Sorry, what match are we talking about there?
India, Sri Lanka.
Oh, yes.
They destroyed them. I think it's a tough ask without Kane in particular. Tim Southee, Trent Bolt, obviously, for reasons we'll probably discuss shortly. I think if they sneak a game, it'll be a good result.
So who's your like for like? Does Ben Lister get a crack in India? Does Dougie Bracewell get a crack in India?
I'd probably pick Doug before Ben, but I've been impressed with Ben Lister.
I am so glad, Scotty, that you mentioned Ben Lister because I've got big raps on that guy. And I was saying in the podcast last year, I was watching him bowl and I thought, this guy's got the goods. Big, tall left armour.
Have you umpired him?
No, not that I can recall.
Yeah.
But for me, he looks a definite prospect.
He's a strange kind of bowler. He looks far more muscular, like a real shoulder bowler when you're watching him. But then when you see him up close, he's a lot more lithe than you give him credit for. He's quick and he's got better and better as he's gone along. I think they'd be tempted in a tour where they know they're up against it to give him a run. But the Doug Bracewell, and we mentioned Super Smash earlier, he has been so good for CD in Super Smash. Just the way he bowls and the maturity he's playing with now and just using all of his cricket IP, which is so good to see from Dougie Bracewell.
Yeah, and he is a gifted cricketer and one of the best bowling actions going around, I reckon. So that'll be interesting to see what develops there. You mentioned Trent Bolt, Dylan. He won't be picked against England. Fiasco or fair enough?
I think it's fair enough. I think it would be
it is.
I think it would be a fiasco if he could go and play the is it the international T20 in the United Arab Emirates and come back from that and walk straight into a camp and start playing red ball cricket against arguably the best red ball team in the world. Well, certainly the most revolutionary red ball team at the moment. Australia maybe still a little bit ahead of them.
And
I just don't think you can.
Yeah. Sends a bad message in my books. But anyway.
Well, but it's an interesting... Trent Bolt on his day walks into the test team.
Yep.
Trent Bolt has been instrumental in the development of that test team over a long period of time. It's not about Trent Bolt not being good enough to play test cricket.
No.
And so this is where the complication lies. This is about Trent Bolt has decided that he wants to shape his own career. And the unfortunate thing when you decide to do that is you don't get to have it every way.
Yeah.
You either get to say, no thanks, I don't want a central contract, I'm going to go and earn money in this league, play this tournament, do this thing, all power to you. Love it. I think you should be free to do that. But there are consequences to the decisions we make. And, you are a freelancer. And it might just be a case of New Zealand cricket having to say, for the sake of the development of the next players coming through, that, and for the sake of their sport internationally, we can't do this. We can't accommodate you. That's going to upset fans. I've had plenty of conversations all summer about whether Trent Bolt should be in that test team. And there are a lot of cricket fans out there who desperately want him to be lining up come February 16.
Yep.
And that is fact. And he knows that. But I think Trent Bolt has made his decision and he has to be comfortable with making that decision. He made it for his own best interests, and New Zealand cricket's got to operate for its own best interests. And that is it's a horrible reality, really, because, I know I will miss watching him play Test cricket in February.
Absolutely. And as you're saying there, Scotty, I fair cop to him. Absolutely go and do with your career what you want to do and what's best for Trent Boult. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But I don't think when someone, as you say, makes those choices that we then accommodate them, because I do think it sends the wrong message. And just on that tour of the English touring over here, that's going to be absolutely... I can't wait.
Well, if you're looking
we'll get into that a little bit, not in this podcast, but when we get a bit closer.
Well, I would say, as a word of warning, if you are looking to get to the Bay Oval or the Basin and you haven't booked accommodation, good luck.
Do it, yeah.
Because the Barmy Army have booked out everything.
Really?
It is going to be a fabulous atmosphere at both of those test matches. So, A, get your ticket, but B... you need to beg, borrow, steal accommodation from friends and family if you're in the Bay Area, that's for sure.
So if you're listening, Viva Macca,
you'll be there.
book me in.
Beautiful. Waiting! Hey, let's just quickly turn to the Australian-South African series, which I watched a great deal of. I can't help myself. No. I love watching cricket in Australia. There's just something about it. It reeks of summer for me. And I must admit, it had a feeling of New Zealand's last tour to Australia, where we struck Australia just as everything sort of slotted into place. And Australia were at the top of their game. They've got so much of an arsenal to choose from. And the South Africans just hapless.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't help getting knocked over by the camera, if you're Norky, did it? I don't know if you saw that. I mean, some Wirecam operator's been fired, but to me it was emblematic of the South African Test tour. It was like, mate, you are not going to buy a trick here. In fact, even the Australian broadcast camera is going to knock one of your players in the head. This is just the way it's going to be.
Well, the interesting, you mentioned Norky there. God, what a nightmare he would be to face. He's a real talent. And for me, the South Africans, no problems on the bowling front. For me, Dylan Cleaver, and I don't know how much of the series you caught, the top six for South Africa was their real weakness, though they do have some players coming in after this tour.
Yeah, no, I watched a lot of it. I thought they were poor batting, absolutely poor. Dean Elgis couldn't score a run and kept on going out in the same way, getting tucked up.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, I've never been convinced about his opening partner, whose name I cannot pronounce, but it looks like Irwi. But I understand it's not said like that.
Irvi.
Right, there you go.
Thanks, Scotty. That's why we brought you in, mate.
Just my limited knowledge of Afrikaans.
Bavuma did Bavuma. Looked very compact and gets to a certain amount of runs, then goes
and then
out.
blows it.
But South Africa bowled pretty well for the most part. But jeepers, Australia have got a couple of batters that are fantastic to watch now. Travis Head is...
Oh, he's playing with absolute confidence. It's like he's suddenly
box office
discovered his game now, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's just going out there and attacking all and sundry.
What did you make of the declaration at 195? Is it Khawaja on 195? And they declared. What do you make of that?
I didn't mind it because it was their only chance, and it was a small chance, but it was a chance. Because South Africa were batting so poorly, if they could have skittled them, then get them in again, their confidence shattered. But no, I didn't mind it. And Khawaja hasn't got a double ton, so it might be one of those little wrinkles in his career. But he's the other one.
Question.
He's the other one that is just a fantastic player to watch. Man, he is silky. Yeah. Travis Head just goes about and it's like a buffet meal for him. Doesn't matter what's been bowled at him, he just wants it. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, I don't care what side is facing the Australians, that bowling lineup, when you've got, your Bolins as well who are rested, and your Hazelwoods, it's just a phenomenal bowling attack. There's no respite, and
it's got the swag too, and it's got the traditional Australia swag, doesn't it? It's going to be repetitive, it's going to be relentless. No one is going to ease up on you. You're going to get chirped out of the game if your head's not strong enough, and even if your head is strong enough, the delivery is probably stronger. It's a relentless bowling attack, and it just feels to me almost like Australia. Maybe I'm doing them a disservice, but there's something clicking at exactly the right time in that Australian team for me.
I'm already salivating at the prospect of the Ashes.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, how good!
And I tell you what, I've just been watching the Test, the latest episodes from the Test, and Scott Boland was so close to not playing that breakthrough game
at the MCG.
Justin Langer wanted to retain Michael Nessa, who had bowled well at Adelaide Oval. Yeah. Paddy Cummins got his way, as he tended to get his way a lot during that little period of Australian cricket. And, yeah, he was described as just the guy who could walk down the main street of Melbourne totally unmolested, unrecognised. He comes in and just
blows everyone away.
At the G.
Yeah. He's relentless bowling, isn't he? Yeah, he's a phenomenal bowler. Now, we mentioned this earlier on in the podcast that Super Smash have been really genuinely enjoying that in a much underrated competition, I think it is too. And Scotty, of course, you've been commentating that and going to various matches. Central Districts at the moment are top on 18 points, Wellington 14, Canterbury 12, Otago 12, Northern Districts 10 and Auckland 6. That Will Young comes up just short in his bid for 36. How good was that over, man? He just cleared the stadium. That was... Yeah. And I've always felt this about Will Young. He's such a great batsman to watch and such a sweet striker of the ball. I thought he was going to get it.
I thought he had got it.
Yeah, so when he smacked Danny
Ferns is sitting at backward square. And, both Rig and I immediately got excited when Dalport bowled a sort of half-track bouncer, which Will Young, in post-match interviews, said I was expecting it. I knew it was coming, played for it, but just didn't quite get it all. It was extraordinary. And we were losing our gherkins because... that's the kind of moment that I think Super Smash thrives on. And Will Young, remember, who's been in Karachi for Christmas and done nothing but net, he was ready to explode out of the blocks. And it probably, if you're looking at it as a pastiche of cricket, it's Will Young, who's a guy who's, and he said to me, and I love this line from him, I said, what do you have to prove between now and the next year? He said, I don't have to prove anything.
Yeah.
I want to go out and play.
Heard that.
And I thought, good on you, mate. Good on you for saying that. But it's Will Young, who might not feel he has to prove anything, but he's going to go out there and prove something. And against Louis Dalport, one of the most special characters in the tournament, and it's just going to all parts of Eden Park. And it was just a very special moment in the competition, I thought, because Louis never stopped smiling for the entire over. It didn't matter where Will Young was sitting him.
Never stopped giving you ear, too.
Never stopped floating it up. And then, and you look to yourself, and this is what I love about Super Smash, we're talking about it afterwards. Is Will Young's wicket worth 30 runs? Maybe it is. I don't know.
Maybe not in 5 balls.
Not in 5. But you can see the smiles afterward. And you went through the table. CD are playing great cricket. They're playing great cricket on the back of Jaden Lennox and Josh Clarkson. Doug Bracewell was instrumental in sort of getting their season kick-started after a very narrow loss to Wellington at Fitzherbert. Pukakura, they were great. But they seem to have just carried on. Will Young coming back in. They've got Ross Taylor, who's played one good innings at Pukakura, but is flattered to deceive a little in between. Brett Randell, who's bowling really well, the pace man at CD. Yeah, I rate him too. Rate the headband as well. He's really made that his own. They're going to be a tough side to beat, but that men's table, Auckland are probably the most unlucky. They've had 2 games rained off, but past the 5 over mark, so they've gone down to Canterbury and obviously went down to CD too last weekend. Northern have been disappointing for me in the competition, and Otago really looked on Saturday or Sunday it was at Uni Oval that they'd just kind of forgotten how to win. They had Wellington on the ropes, bowled them out for 120. And got there on 19.3 overs, and it's just maybe that's enough for them to click into gear now, because I think Otago with Foxcroft and Michael Ray, one who's producing runs and wickets, and the other I think the top wicket taker too, and Razor. They're a side that has a lot of potential to go deep into this competition. I'd like to see them in the finals.
I could see that Foxcroft being elevated quite quickly. I'm not sure what his qualification status is, being another South African, and he also had the unfortunate situation of being going home for a holiday and then not being able to get back in because of COVID. So that might have buggered up his qualification, but he is a hell of a cricketer.
Yeah. Also of note, as you mentioned, Josh Clarkson from CD, his batting numbers. 4 innings, 178 runs, an average of 59.3. Strike rate, fellas, of 200.
Lunacy. He does get the benefit of some home games at Pookie Park.
Yeah, but whatever. He'd hit 6 anywhere.
Yeah.
He's got that big kookaburra and the sound off the bat. I've said it time and time again, it's the most sensual sound of summer, a Josh Clarkson 6. There is no sound like it. I don't know if it's the kookaburras, because there's a few players who make a similar sound, but no one quite like Josh Clarkson.
Right.
Yeah, great to watch. And I know you got the women's table there as well, Jason.
Yes.
And Wellington are streets ahead of the rest at the moment. But where the intrigue lies for me in the women's competition is what happens when the White Ferns disappear, which is this coming weekend. They're off, I think, Monday, in fact. They fly to the Women's T20 World Cup. Things are going to take on a different complexion. Canterbury really well positioned. Canterbury will be hard to beat. I think they will lose one player and one player only, and that'll be Lea Tahuhu to that White Ferns side.
So I want to read you a bit of mail we've
Yeah.
got, actually, and it's from a guy I know, actually, Campbell, and he said he went along to a game and he wrote this to me. He said, Wellington dominating the Super Smash again is not a problem for Wellington, but it is a problem. I went along to Fitzherbert Park over Christmas and watched the Blaze thrash CD, and they didn't even have Sophie Devine. The talent disparity was so stark it made for a poor spectacle, and I went away thinking if CD played them 20 times, they probably wouldn't win a single game, and that's in a format that's supposed to level out the talent, or a crapshoot, as you mentioned before a little bit. I know the onus should be on other teams to rise to meet Wellington standards, but if the talent isn't there to do it, who actually benefits from this?
Yeah, and look, it's a fair point, and it's a fair point in relation to CD, who just can't get over the line at the moment. And it's run production for Central, nothing else. They just can't score runs. Nat Dodd has been the best, I think, with the bat, and she would be a fantastic test player. But their captain, Jess Watkin, who we know can score runs, has just not got past single figures this summer, and that just, there's a ripple effect throughout that team.
Yeah.
Look, Canterbury, you'll recall Wellington were on a hot streak. They'd won 16 in a row heading into the final last time, 2 years ago, and Canterbury surprised them in the final. They've just reached 17 straight again to break their own record. The second best team in the competition at the time was Otago, and they can't get close to them, not even with Susie Bates working her magic, and she has all season long as usual. They're just a team. It's the Tawa Mafia, Wellington.
Yeah.
You got Sophie Devine, you've got the Kerr sisters. I think Becky Burns is a Tawa girl as well, and Georgia Plimmer. Georgia Plimmer's away at the moment, as is Tash Kodai, but they go into every game with Jess Kerr, probably the best in-swing bowler in the country, Monika Singh, who's very tough to get away in the power play, and then they've got four spinners, Mealy Kerr, Lee Kasbrick, both international, Zara Jetley on the way up, and Nicole Baird, who made her debut late in the piece, but has bowled beautiful off-spin all competition long. They just have a formula that works, and they've got the calibre of players to play to that formula. They're expertly coached too by Luke Woodcock and Lance Try. So teams are just playing catch-up. I would love to see the talent spread through the regions, but I just think we're in a special era for Wellington where they're just producing some of the best cricketers in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's homegrown, isn't it?
It is homegrown.
They're not bringing them in.
They're not importing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is that I would love to see more internationals in this competition. And we've seen a couple, and I think we'll see a couple more come in once the White Ferns leave. But having Amanda Jade Wellington over from Australia, even just for 3 rounds, I think it was, with Northern, what a boost to the young spinners in that team and to the players in that team. These sorts of players, I think, would love the opportunity. New Zealand Cricket's ring-fenced the competition, and again, that is their right too. But I think there's plenty of talent around the world, whether in England or Australia, top-level female players, women's players who would love to come and play Super Smash and would really thrive, and I think it would benefit the competition.
Well, it's that scenario too. You think about the Auckland rugby side, was it in the 80s, where they were just basically unbeatable?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And other teams had to rise to the level, and it may be an elongated process, but at least those teams that are chasing Wellington know what the bar is, you know what I mean, in terms of where they need to get. Just on the women's competition, Wellington, of course, in the lead with 24, Canterbury 20, Auckland 10, Otago 10, Northern District 6, and Central Districts, as mentioned, yet to get off the mark.
Yeah. Excuse me. The third place is going to come down between the Hearts and the Sparks. And the Sparks are going to lose Susie Bates. They are going to lose Hayley Jensen. They are going to lose Eden Carson. So they're going to lose 3 very good players at least out of that side. Auckland's likely to lose Lauren Down. I would say, obviously, Fran Jonas is already away with the under-19 side, although she's been invalided out of that tournament.
Yeah, I saw that.
So hopefully she'll be fit. So it'll come down to who has the next best talent available. Auckland's got plenty of players in that under-19 setup. They've got plenty of schoolgirl players coming through the ranks. But it'll be fascinating. And I think the difference between those two teams will likely come down to someone like Kate Ibrahim, who I don't think will be picked for the World Cup squad. She might put up some pretty compelling numbers to suggest why she should. But it'll come down to a couple of the veterans able to stand up when the rest of the Ferns leave.
I have watched a bit of this and thought, ooh, how did Lee Kasperick miss that ODI one-day team?
Yeah, Kasperick's a really interesting player to me. She always takes wickets. She always has a say in a game. She's a clever batter, sometimes too clever for her own good. And look, there's no doubt that she's got to be on the cusp. But I think, from what I can tell by the way selections have been made over the last couple of seasons, that they've had to look to the future to build a team of youngsters, whether they're spinners, whether they're batters, whether they're fast bowlers, and actually bring them through. So they know they've got a couple of World Cup cycles in them. And Lee just might find herself in that no man's zone or no woman's zone where she's just missed that boat. The other player to watch is Gabby Sullivan, who is an outstanding bowling proposition.
Top wicket taker.
Yeah, and she's back from injury as well, but she has bowled beautifully so far this year. And look, she's going to be one to watch for sure.
Great stuff. Hey, I can't remember where I was listening to it, but, the prospect of maybe merging or a couple of the New Zealand T20 sides going and playing in the Australian competition. What do you feel about that, fellas?
Why would Australia have them for a start?
Well, why not?
Well, then have to bring something to the table commercially.
Well, it's a different side. Makes it a bit more global.
Here's the thing that this shits me every time. This shits me all the time. We look at the Big Bash, and yet
I don't say that, but I just mean.
But it's played in.
Over here.
I know it's played in big stadia, which are never full. It's about to get a cull anyway on the new broadcast deal. They're going to reduce the number of games. Why do New Zealanders always feel like we have to go and play in an Australian competition? And again, I go back to Super Smash.
Jason.
No, I'm just putting it out.
I know,
it was something that was. I heard people discuss.
It fires me up. We killed rugby league in this country because we've got one team and it plays in the NRL and gets stiffed every single weekend.
Yeah.
There's no rugby league underneath the Warriors in this country to speak of, which is a real shame. Like, we don't have to go and play in another country. We don't have to go and play in another country's tournament. Why don't we say we're going to create the best conditions for our players to play a compelling tournament here, and if the occasional person wants to come over and join our party and play a season or play a few games or be a part of it, then you come to us. New Zealand should not be going cap in hand anymore in any sport to Australia where they just get robbed every single weekend.
Yeah, Australia.
Take that.
Filthy,
we don't need it. The only people, do you know the only people who want it are people who see nothing but dollar signs and they think it's a great way to make a bit of money off a broadcast deal, but long term, it absolutely ruins local grassroots sport in this country.
What a way to end the podcast. Great stuff, Scotty. Great stuff.
He's got one more.
Oh, yes.
Well, I'm just intrigued, actually, because we're talking, we're talking about this T20 cricket and the growth of it, and I think there's a potential real game changer for our women cricketers here.
Massive.
And that is the Viacom has just spent, it's close to 200 million New Zealand to buy the rights for the women's IPL. Cricket is on the cusp of...
women's cricket's about to go nuclear, mate.
Yeah.
That to be honest, this is the biggest story in women's cricket ever. The fact that this is going to be a viable tournament. And I tell you what, mate, we're weeks away from a draft here, from these teams picking up. And they had to buy the franchises, and there were 12 bidders for the 5 teams. I mean, it's not as if, they're going around begging people to come and invest in women's cricket. This is going to be a huge deal for the best women's cricketers in the world. Make no mistake. And, we're going to see some stars from New Zealand get contracts there, I'm sure.
Great stuff.
And one final thing before you cut the cord.
Yes.
Bags Murray passed away last week, grandfather of Jess and Amelia Mally Kerr, and a fine test cricketer himself. Played a big part in one of New Zealand's only test wins in Pakistan. He scored 90. I think it might have been Lahore. Maybe it was Karachi. I should have really researched that before I came, but yeah, another good one gone.
Yeah. Oh, well, rest in peace. Now, listen, fellas, this has been fantastic. Hey, what's going on with the bounce at the moment, Cleaver?
Just cranking back up after a small summer hiatus.
Nice.
Good. Yeah. Have I re-upped my sub?
I hope so.
God, me too.
I need it.
Yeah.
Hey, listen.
Best sports newsletter in the country.
Thanks to all of you for joining us on this BYC podcast. And Scotty, great having you in, mate.
It's been a pleasure. I'm no Paul Ford. I'm not New Zealand's premier
look,
sports
your insight
journalist.
on the Super Smash and the women's game, fantastic, man. Really, really good. So make sure you listen and subscribe. And if you've got any communications, what do they do again, Dylan?
Yeah, this is
Paul Ford's
This is
sort
his
of
remit.
Yeah.
I think you slide into our DMs is what he says.
Yeah, slide into our DMs.
Or the beigbrigade.co.nz. I think you can also send some correspondence.
Yeah, or nudes. Send nudes
Fantastic.
if you want.
Hey, and also before we finish off, fellas, exciting news.
Oh, what
the
is it?
Deluxe Super Bash, Eden Park, Saturday, January 28th. This is your chance to face an over on New Zealand's national stadium, Eden Park, and try and smash a six like Martin Guptill or Grant the Hairy Jav Elliott. Tickets are now only $41 per person. There's heaps of cash on the line, with Eden Park offering up a huge $5,000 cash prize for the Super Bash champion. Plus, Vodafone are giving everyone one more chance for glory by giving you one more ball on top of your over. Hit the Vodafone ball for six and you'll instantly win $100 cash. Text BASH to 3236 for all ticket details.
Jeez, you've read that well.
Thanks, mate.
Was it deluxe or Dulux?
Oh, yeah, Dulux. Did I say deluxe? God damn it. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.